welcome back to another edition of the podcast. And as always, I'm joined by Paul Franklin tonight. It's our Game Week 37 National League preview and predictions. But before we get into all of that, I'd like to firstly congratulate Paul, of course, on the Mighty Stones making it to the semi-final of the FA Trophy at the weekend.
Yeah, a contrasting sort of set of emotions around the game on Saturday, Luke, because without a doubt, it's one of the worst games of football I think I've seen in a very long time. It was void of an awful lot of quality. I don't think any team really deserved to win it in the second half. There was hardly a shot on goal, to be honest. And then to win it on the penalty shootout in, 6-5? So, into the sudden death in front of us with 501 travelling Stones fans. It was a moment to remember. I think, the good thing about it, Luke, and many clubs will appreciate this, is we try and build fan bases and we're trying to bring that next generation of supporters into the clubs you support, or following non-league rather than the EFLs and the Premier Leagues. And, it was a coach full of Wealdstone youth players that had come down with their parents, and to be able to experience the fun of I suppose the thrill, the nervousness, and then the fun of winning the penalty shootout. Hopefully that will make a few of them come back. But listen, it's in our hands. It's in our hands now to go and do something, because we've got a favourable draw. We've missed Southend, Marine at home. They're not going to be any mugs. They've beaten two National League teams. Kidderminster have beaten National League teams. Any team is beatable, and Wealdstone are 100% beatable with their inconsistency. So, I think it's in Wealdstone's hands to lose it, but they've got to take Marine, show Marine a lot of respect and not take them lightly. And we potentially could be spending a Sunday afternoon at Wembley, but we've got many league games between now and then, and worrying about our league status, Luke. And that's the conundrum, isn't it? We just spoke off air. You win in an FA Trophy quarter-final like you do, you get a new manager, and then you go and lose to Morecambe, who can't seem to win a game for love nor money. So it's a topsy-turvy time to be a Stones fan.
Yeah, that's what's interesting, I suppose, with Wealdstone, sacking the manager, bringing in the new manager, FA Trophy semi-final. But on the other hand, all of a sudden, it feels like you've been dragged into the relegation battle once again. After losing to Morecambe out. Prior to that, Morecambe, I know we've seen a little bit of an improvement under Jim Bentley. They played very well against York, but as a Wealdstone fan, you must be very disappointed, by that result. I suppose the one question I'm going to ask you on this, and I think you probably know what's going to come, is the FA Trophy a potential distraction for Wealdstone going into the final 10 or so games?
I wouldn't. Do you know what, Luke? I wouldn't. Excuse me. I wouldn't have said so. I think if anything, the league campaign will probably distract from the FA Trophy, because if we can get 2, 3, 4 wins, or 10 points between now and that game, which I think we've probably got. I think, is it 6 games, 5 or 6 games between now and then? There's winnable games in there, no two ways about it. There's going to be some tough fixtures as well. So I think no one can really think about that FA Trophy semi-final and Wembley, because we've got so many league games to consider. So I think you can really flip it on its head and go, actually, the league campaign is a distraction to that, because we would much rather be safe to be able to enjoy that. By then it may well be a distraction, Luke, because we'll know where we're at. But at the moment, we've got games in hand. We're playing Saturday, Tuesday. Hopefully, the new manager can bring in a couple of players potentially. And we'll get, we've got Braintree on Saturday, big 6-pointer as an example. Tamworth next Tuesday. Immediately 2 games you think on paper they should be games that we've got to look to be winning. So who knows? Ask me in a couple of weeks, I think, is the best thing with that question.
Yeah, what I did look when I was looking at Wealdstone's fixtures as well coming up, there's a lot of favourable ones before that FA Trophy game, but the final, couple of fixtures, I think the final 5, potentially even 6 actually. I think all of those sides could be in with a shout of the playoffs come the end of the season. So I think they'll be desperate, with the next one of fixtures to potentially climb away from the drop zone and be safe going into that FA Trophy game. Congratulations to Southend United too on making the FA Trophy semi-final, just 1 game away from them returning to Wembley for the 2nd year running. Could they make it 3 times in a row if they do maintain a playoff spot. Please remember, guys, to get your thoughts in the comments and all the discussions that we're going to be talking about. Also, remember to like and subscribe. It really does go a long way. There's lots to discuss tonight. And somewhere that I would definitely like to start is the news with the EFL today, the 3 up, 3 down campaign. Well, that's not even the news, I suppose. It's not even National League as such, but I think it does link to the National League, and it's very relevant to talk about. The EFL have announced that they'll be changing the playoff format for the Championship from next season. It'll be the exact same, similar format to the National League, except that they, of course, do have 2 automatic promotion spots. But that will mean that the rest of the sides competing in the playoffs, it goes from 3rd to 8th. And from that point, it is exactly the same as the National League format. Now, the reason that this is relevant to the National League is the 3 up, 3 down campaign. There's been no later news on that from the EFL. We've been discussing this on the podcast since we formed the podcast, yet nothing has really progressed or changed. There's been added pressure, yes, from non-league, but it doesn't seem to have made a difference. Yet the new Championship playoff format has been talked about for a couple of months, and all of a sudden it's been introduced. That's a very controversial decision as well with Championship fans. I feel like it's a 50-50 split. A lot of them are for it and a lot of them are against it. Where the 3 up, 3 down campaign, 99% of National League supporters want the additional promotion spot. Paul, what's your thoughts on this overall and the news that's come out today?
Well, my immediate thought was this has got to be finance-driven, TV rights-driven, because keeping teams interested. I get why you want to keep teams interested longer in the season to keep crowds coming, to help with the TV revenues. But I think what is more the important thing is exactly what you've highlighted, Luke, and many people have on social media, is the fact that we've been banging on for the 3 up, 3 down for God knows how long now. And there doesn't seem to be any movement yet. Overnight, it almost appears that they can decide that they're going to change the playoff format for their own benefit. As a neutral, I like that playoff format, and I'm not afraid to say that I like it in the National League because it does keep more teams involved. But the other thing we got, Luke, is we got 4 that go down in the National League, not 3. So we got an extra relegation place. I think the format we have with only 1 going up is excellent for the neutral and those that like National League, but I completely understand and would 100% agree that we should have 3 up, 3 down. No 2 ways about it. So, but then to almost play lip service that they're talking about it, and then go and just change this Championship, because then what you can see after that, Luke, is it will go to League 1 and it will go to League 2. And as someone I saw on social media, right, and I think I kind of agree with it, is how can you have someone who may finish 8th get promoted? You now that listen, that's not a disaster, but are you almost giving success to relative failure? Because if you finished 8th and still get up, where's the incentive to try and finish in the top 6 or the top 3? And then when you look at, say, American sport, Stanley Cup finals in ice hockey, the NBA finals, the Major League Baseball, best of 7. You got to win 4 games to go to become champion. So you could be really shit for 3 or 4 games, for 3 games and still win it. So I just it starts to dilute it a little bit, and I think it's purely TV revenues, sponsorship. That's why it's driving it. It's got absolutely nothing to do with footballing reasons whatsoever, in my opinion.
I think the EFL needs to be completely restructured in terms of who's actually running it. And I think in football in general, because the way it's going, not really even National League level, but, the Premier League, for me, I barely watch it anymore. I can't watch it. I get bored by it. And I feel like the Championship's going to be the next league that's going to be, affected by this, where people are going to be put off it. And that is probably, in my opinion, the biggest competitor to the National League for being the greatest league in the world. I'd say the National League. I am going to be biased on that, but I do have an argument for it. But the Championship in the next few years is going to be killed because of formats like this. Yes, it makes it a little bit more entertaining towards the end of the season, but I think the whole point behind it, sporting merit behind it, just for me just shows, how out of touch these people at the top are in terms of football. And back to the National League on this point, sporting merit is particularly important with this league. 2 sides get promoted from this division, 1 automatically. There's been so many cases in the last couple of years where sides are getting 90-odd points. We've even seen 100-plus points before and not getting promoted. And there's absolutely no argument against, keeping it how it is. People will say, well, League 2 sides, they're voting against it. Obviously, they're going to vote against it. If you're bottom half League 2 side, like a Harrogate, you're going to vote against it because you know that eventually you're going to drop back down into the National League. You've got more chance of surviving with just 2 relegation spots. What the EFL need to do is take it out of their club's hands and make a decision for themselves. Stop having silly, irrelevant votes from bottom half League 2 sides being involved and have an open discussion, including people from the National League. It doesn't feel like anyone's really... anyone's coming out and speaking to people who are passionate about the National League or giving a good reason to not add an additional promotion spot. If they came out and came with some reasons why they're not looking to add an additional promotion spot, then potentially then we'll have an opportunity to debate it. But at the moment, there's nothing to debate. An extra promotion spot is needed. It's essential just for the footballing game. Like, as a podcast, entertainment, we love the National League playoffs. We love the format of it. We love the league in general. We love the fact that big clubs are being dragged into this league because it gives the league more exposure. But there's got to be a point where you've got to sacrifice that for that additional promotion spot. And for me, it needs to happen. And everyone probably who's watching this agrees with me. I'd love to actually speak to someone who doesn't agree with me. I've actually tried putting a tweet out saying that could we get a debate going with someone who's actually happy to keep it how it is so we can have a good debate about it, yet no one's responded. But on the other hand, we had loads of people responding to why they want that additional promotion spot. So for me, there's no argument to be had, to be honest, overall.
No, I agree with you, Luke. And all we can do as fans and keep banging that drum and clubs and chairmen and boards and whoever it may be, just keep banging that drum. And you hope at some point that, the men in blazers up at the top end in the EFL Ivory Tower decide that they want to play ball. And it smacks in the face of the 3 up, 3 down, because like I said, you're giving the top 8 the opportunity to get relegated, to get promoted in the Championship, but you're saving, many more teams from getting relegated. And you're like, well, you can't have it both ways. You can't have too many teams wanting to get promoted or trying to help teams get promoted for your own bit, but then not actually make it difficult, like you said, for teams to stay in the league. They should be tested. And you're right, it does seem very odd that the vote comes from those teams that are affected by the change. That shouldn't be the case. You're right. It should come out a board of the individuals, whoever it may be, take it away from the clubs to vote, because it's clear what the clubs are going to vote. Anyone in League 2 is going to vote against it, because any one of those teams in League 2 could go down from there because they're in that league. They're under, even those that spend money in that league, even those that are top of that league, are going to turn around and go, just in case, no, I'm not going to do it, because I'd rather see one less place to have to worry about. So, yeah, it's hugely frustrating. Not a lot we can do about it, Luke. We just got to have to just sort of plod along and keep banging that drum and showcase what the National League's about.
We certainly do. We'll come to the live chat anyway and see what you guys have been saying. Also, if you're in the comments watching this afterwards as a podcast, please also get your thoughts in below. Lee's coming tonight, said, evening, lads. Welcome to the stream, Lee. We've had Jason in tonight. Evening all, hope he's well. Hope everyone had a good week so far. Well, it had to happen eventually. We got beat, but not as a bad run. Yeah, York's 24 undefeated run, of course, was ended in midweek. We had another York fan who's come in, still disappointed they got beat Tuesday, but the better team on the day won. Big win Saturday, hoping the Dale drop points, playing a bang in form Boston. Tricky fixture for them, it certainly is. We had an Oldham Athletic fan in tonight as well, Paul.
Oh, and it's the Y042 drummer, even all, was at Boreham on Tuesday for our first loss in 24. Oh, no, he's a York fan. We were the weaker team. Abdul Malik and Bush won't be there next season. No, there's a lot of plaudits for Abdul Malik and Chris Bush doing very, very well in the in the National League. And it's interesting, is it, with Boreham Wood, that they had that blip, but they managed to stay in there and they've turned that around. And whatever Luke Garrard and his team have said to each other, done on the chain, on the training ground, they've really turned it around. And I don't think there's any disgrace from York losing to Boreham Wood. Yeah, I heard Stuart Maynard's presser after the game. Things may not have gone their way. I haven't watched it. I can't comment on that. But ultimately, these things do come to an end, and teams will drop points. There's not a chance York would have gone the rest of this season, winning every game or not losing every game. And to go away to Boreham Wood on a Tuesday night after the sort of run that all these teams are having, Monday, Saturday, Tuesdays, something's going to give at some point. And Boreham Wood took advantage of playing against 10 men, and rightly they should. And they've got their own worries around trying to stay in the playoffs, so they're going to go full tilt. So I don't think there's any disgrace in losing that. And I think I heard one of the media guys from York saying he was walking away from this as a loss, still feeling positive because of the performance that was put in by them, and the fact that on the night sometimes you do get beaten by the better team. It's just that's just how it is.
I think, as I mentioned on the actual reaction stream we did, I actually think that, to be honest, I think the reaction is going to be more important in terms of how York perform in the upcoming weeks rather than that result. They've done 24 games unbeaten. It was going to end at some point, and to end it at Boreham Wood, there's worse teams away from home to end it at. We've also had John in tonight, a Carlisle fan. He said Barrow will soon change their mind when they get relegated. Well, that's the exact reason why they're not voting for it at the moment. I think they just dropped into the bottom two now this season. But, Barrow, Harrogate, Newport, they'd all be gone. Bristol Rovers could potentially, get relegated if there were four sides that were going down. They're not going to vote for it at all. And as you mentioned, Paul, even the top half League Two sides who spend loads of money are still not going to vote for it just in case, because we've seen a lot of big sides in the past that have dropped into this division, so they're not going to want to vote for it. But of course, once you come into this league, everyone's fully for it. At the moment, for me, I just don't think much is going to change. If I'm being honest, I remember when the Wrexham and Notts County season, the amount of media coverage that got was a lot more than the York Rochdale title race that we're seeing now, to be honest, overall, because Wrexham and the American ownership that they had and the pressure, even people like Ryan Reynolds were putting on the EFL, yet they still didn't make a decision. So I don't see how they're going to make a decision now, even though York and Rochdale could, it's realistic for them both to actually break the record that Wrexham and Notts County set that season. Something else I want to discuss tonight as well is Morecambe, who've been put under a transfer embargo. This was a disputed payment from Bond Group, the previous owners. That's what Punjab have come out and stated. Do you believe them, Paul, overall, or do you think it's something on Punjab's side of things?
I think, and I don't know too much about this at all, Luke, but on the face of it, if you're running a football club, you need to know what you're doing, and you need to know what payments need to be made. You need to know what has been paid. You need to know, how you register players. There's all these things in the administration of a football club that you should know. I think it's, are they pulling everyone's plonker? Who knows? We have no idea, right? The least is that they should understand what the hell's going on and realise that there's this mistake has been made, or these payments need to be made, because they're running a football club. This is what happens. And it's naive that they haven't understood this or haven't foreseen this, and they're going to suffer from it. Listen, I saw one play the other night. They're a decent enough team. I think they've probably got enough to stay up if they keep on the form they're on. But whether they were looking to get more players in to help that squad or change it, that's now going to be obviously a difficult one. They can't do it, so they're going to have to go with what they got. And let's see how they get on with that.
Yeah, it is to do with a deal of money prior to them being owners is apparently what's been said, but nobody really knows. There's nothing much that's really been said. I've asked one or two Morecambe supporters before I went on air about it, and no one particularly knows much about it. I just know that, the relationship between the fans and the owners at the moment, there's a lot of fans that are not particularly confident with the current owners long term in terms of things that are coming out of the club, such as this, for example. Like, you'd have thought this would have been cleared up early on in the season. The transfer embargo at this stage of the season isn't a big deal at the moment because no one for Morecambe, they're not really going to sign players at this stage of the season. Still an outside chance of them surviving. It's a big ask, I still think, for them to go on to survive this season. But also, when we heard statements earlier in the season when someone on the board was involved in a terrorist group, things like that come out of the club, for me, overall, isn't particularly positive to hear about new owners, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they seem to lurch from one major issue to minor issue to major issue, don't they? They've not had an easy time of it on and off. Some of it is their own doing, Luke, in terms of the manager they appointed, the rumours with the board members they've got on their side, personnel have been recruited and they've left. I think it was the commercial manager or the fan liaison officer has left, hasn't she, over the last few weeks, having been appointed at the beginning of the season. So it's the COO they brought in has got a very checkered and colourful past, and they're not making it easy for themselves. Let's put it that way. And then, they did as well as they could on the pitch on Tuesday night against Wealdstone and managed to get a win. And I genuinely can see them making a push to stay up because of what they've got. They were very poor in the first 10, 15 minutes, then really came into the game and, scored some good goals, got some good players. And, even with 10 men, they managed to hold out. So, they're going to make a fight for it by the looks of it on the pitch. They just don't need this off the field dramas that continually sort of happen. So, from their perspective, from Jim Bentley's perspective, brought him up off his sofa. He said the other day he was on his sofa a few weeks ago and it was quite easy. Now he's back in the National League. So, they've got to give him a chance to help the team and the whole squad get themselves out of this predicament.
Of course, it was announced earlier this week that Neil Ardleys was sacked as working manager. This came after the FA Trophy defeat to Marine, in fact, who, of course, are Wealdstone's upcoming opponents. I want to firstly get your opinion on Neil Ardleys being dismissed as working manager. They currently sit mid-table in the National League. Should be safe from relegation, I feel, this season, and certainly won't be pushing or even knocking on the door for the playoffs either. What's your thoughts on Woking making the decision to sack Neil Ardleys?
It's a difficult one. I've not seen enough of Woking, and he did very well to sort of stabilise them when they were very much on the fringes of getting potentially relegated last season. And I think we always thought they might kick on, and they'd had a really good purple patch, didn't they? And they've dropped away. And I think what it is, Luke, is when you own a football club, from what I see is that they expect a team to play a certain way, or they expect obviously a team to deliver certain performances. Mm-hmm. Yes, we all want to win, and owners want to win, but at the same time, if you're not going to win, it's maybe sometimes looking at the manner of the defeat, I would suggest, because you can't win all the time. Okay, you can't. That's just not possible. But what you want to see as a fan, and ultimately what you probably want to see as an owner, is you want to see some improvement. You want to see some consistency. You want to see a brand of football, and then going to go and get beaten by a team in the National League North, which is, again, there's no disgrace in that. But when you're 2 games from Wembley, you're safe in the National League. You probably, as an owner, would expect them to kick on a bit and do what they meant to do in his win, and that hasn't happened. And I suppose that was just the icing on the cake of what may have been occurring at Woking in terms of their performances overall. Even if results were a little bit iffy, the performances probably weren't great as well, and the owners decided to sort of go a different route. And I feel for Neil Ardleys. He's a good National League manager. He plays a very pragmatic style of football, as we know. and he'll suit someone fairly well in this league or the National League South, I'd imagine, maybe even the EFL. But it'd be interesting to see who Woke can turn to. I couldn't think off the top of my head who it might be at the moment, but there's a few managers out there floating about, that's for sure.
I feel sorry for Neil Ardley overall as working manager. I think he's actually done an okay job, particularly last season, stabilised them, kept them in the National League under this new ownership as well. I actually have this poor season, maybe this underwhelming season in terms of league status and not getting to the FA Trophy final actually on the board overall and on the recruitment side of things. Working, particularly I felt throughout the whole season, been quite a hard side to beat, I'd say. They don't win enough games. That's been the issue for Woking, probably even going back to last season. But they've been strong defensively and they've been well organised throughout the season, I feel. They've got the 5th best defence in the league for a side that's currently sitting 16th. It's the forward side of things that's been the issue. And we know Neil Ardley is quite a defensive-minded manager. But he's not been backed, I feel, in the summer to bring in players going forward. That's how I see it from an outside perspective. If you actually look at the recruitment in the summer, I remember a lot of people being quite underwhelmed, considering Woking had new ownership. It felt like at the time they were quite ambitious owners that wanted to get Woking into the Football League. And, we saw that January window last season when they were bringing in, a lot of marquee players for the time, considering Woking's current situation. Then the summer came, and it just went flat, it felt like they didn't particularly recruit that many players, not many well-known players either, and it felt like there was no identity about them. And as the season's gone on, they've been relatively average, quite tight defensively overall, but not enough at all to really put a case they were to be knocking on the doors for the playoffs. And I understand being knocked out of the FA Trophy, that brings in more revenue than a lot of people feel, and also a day out Wembley for Woking. Being knocked out of that to lower league opposition isn't great, but I don't think it's all on Neil Ardley for me. I think majority of it is on the recruitment, and when I look out at the moment, I'm looking at potential replacements. There's no one that stands out to me that I feel could do a better job than Neil Ardley.
No, I agree. You look at their results recently, apart from the trophy, a draw against an informed Boston's good. No disgrace losing to Rochdale, possibly losing to Sutton. When you look at where their positions are, that's a winnable game. Beat Truro, which you expect them to do, and they've gone and done it. And then they lose to Forest Green, they're in the top 7. So it's not like they're not there. There's only a couple of results where you might expect them to do better than they have. But again, is it the manner of the performances, Luke? There's a lot of other things that go on at football clubs off of the pitch at 3 o'clock or 7:45 on a Tuesday. The Monday to Friday on the training field. The relationship between owners and managers and directors of football and managers and players. Players are quite ruthless. They will down tools and toss it off if they're not having it. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that's the case at Woking, but there's other factors that maybe as fans we don't always either appreciate or see. We just see the 90 minutes every sort of Saturday and Tuesday, if you like, and the performances. But there might be more to this, and who knows? Who knows?
Brad Lewis who's coming in and said, good afternoon from Lakeland. Kevin, I should say, from Lakeland, Florida. Welcome to the stream, Kevin. It's good to see.
Hi, Kevin.
Yeah. We've also had John, who's actually come in tonight, Paul.
Yeah, John Johnson. Hiya, John. Carlisle have put 2 good bids in for Morecambe's Aziz, but they want more money. We'll get him for free at the end of the season, though, Luke. He went off injured on Tuesday night, so I don't know how long he might be out for. It might just be a knock. He looks a good prospect. I mean, he was very highly rated in the Arsenal academy only a few years ago, and sort of went off, I think, to Spanish 2nd or 3rd division, and has since come back. And he looks like he could do a bit. And no disrespect to Morecambe, he'd probably be more effective in a better side. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he did go off injured. He limped off, so you might be bidding for him, but he might be injured as well at the same time, John.
Yeah, he's a bit. What I've noticed from him as an individual this season, he's been very hit and miss, I feel, overall. And I know it's quite hard to judge a player in a side like Morecambe because as a team they've been more of a miss than hit this season, if that makes sense overall. Yeah. But He's certainly got a lot of ability, in particular, like you mentioned, in a better Carlisle side. He could be a good player for the future. But yeah, Morecambe, of course, not rejecting 2 bids so far, it kind of shows to them that, they still feel they can survive this season, and I don't blame them. But, I think maybe it's frustration, I suppose, from a certain section is the fact that they could cash in on him, and a lot feel that Morecambe are pretty much down already. For me, I think it's a big ask for Morecambe to survive, but I think under Jim Bentley, you never know, that type of manager where you feel like as a community coming together. We've seen the improvements in performances, and the results, it does feel like, are going to start coming, as we saw on Tuesday. We've also had Mickey, who's come in and said, "Sorry I'm late, lads. Hope you're both well. Playoff charge is still on. Only just mind." Yeah, of course, for Gateshead, winning in the last minute against Braintree. For me, prior to that game, I think that game was a game where they had to win. Otherwise, they were down for me overall, particularly after losing to Forest Green at the weekend. But they left it late, but they scored a great goal through, of course, Keaton Ward. And, of course, playing at the weekend now, Gateshead 2 away at Chris Millington's Solihull Moors. They're another side. Is it on for them to survive this season, Paul?
Well, you can't knock them for trying, can you, Luke? They brought their manager back that they knew, Rob Elliott. They've kept some of their better players, I would suggest, and I don't know whether they're throwing money at it or not. They are signing a lot of players and trying their best to find a formula. They brought in Adam Dubois from Slough Town this week, and on a deal till the end of the season. And his first game in, he's probably only been in Gateshead a couple of days. He goes and gets man of the match. Does that? Mickey probably be able to tell us more, but does that indicate that they're still fragile at the back, and he's had to have an absolute blinder of a game against a fairly sort of toothless or indifferent Braintree? Or are Gateshead showing signs that they, throughout their 11, that they've got the ability and the nous now to go on a bit of a run? I think they're leaving Truro behind, aren't they, Morecambe and Gateshead, and they're catching. They're almost catching Braintree up. I think that what Gateshead have got going for them, and Wealdstone are similar, and Woking are similar. They've got games in hand, but you've got to take those games in hand, and it's going to be a long slog for teams like that, because they're going to have to play Saturday, Tuesday now, right the way through. But if Gateshead can get a bit of winning momentum, Morecambe are similar. They'll leave Truro behind. They'll catch Braintree up. And then all of a sudden, that last 4 or 5 or 6 games really becomes interesting for them all.
I do think they're pretty much down, but I do want to highlight Truro's result in midweek, of course, going away to Southend United and actually getting a point there. Massive credit to them for that. But as for Southend United, just doesn't seem like they're taking advantage of these games in hands on the likes of Halifax and Hartlepool, and keeping that 7th place finals playoff spot. Progression for Halifax and Hartlepool very much still alive.
No, exactly. Yeah. And when you look at the form table, Luke, Scunthorpe haven't won one. They've picked up 2 points in the last 5 games, and you thought Southend could easily do that. And Southend go and only pick up 6 out of the last 5 games. So yeah, it's a really difficult one. Even Halifax, to a point, they're not gripping this. And Forest Green, no one seems to want that bottom end of the playoffs picture to secure the place. And yeah, that's an mightily impressive draw for Truro to go to Southend, because that's not an easy team to go and get points against when you're someone like Truro. But it just goes to show, Gateshead have put up a fight, Morecambe put up a fight, Truro pick a point up. Everyone's still fighting for those points, no matter how dead and buried they might seem. And that's what's going to make it interesting with the bottom 4, and dragging the likes of maybe Woking, Brackley, Wealdstone into that mix. Braintree as well, obviously bring them into that mix to see, are they going to be banging trouble? But you then look at Yeovil, and we thought a couple of weeks ago, Yeovil will look like they were a little bit doomed and on the wrong slide in. They've really picked up a few results. So it really is, Luke. It's just a case of get 2 or 3 results. All of a sudden, you're almost mid-table again, aren't you? So, yeah, really an interesting sort of back end of this season now, because it is so bunched.
It's very open, which I do like as well. You know, there's the playoff race, which is still very much alive. I feel there's still 10 games to go. A title race that we've got, top 3 still open. And, you know, the relegation battle all of a sudden's heating up as well, where, you know, there aren't many sides now, probably apart from Solihull, I'd say, who have basically nothing to play for. And even the optimistic Solihull Moors fans still may feel that they can finish in the playoffs this season. Ethan, of course, is a Hartlepool fan, has come in tonight and said, will be an interesting game for both our teams on Saturday, Luke. With Halifax not winning away from home since the 24th of January, feel like anything will happen. It's a must-win game. The one thing we don't want is a draw. You know, neither of us want that. I think we'll both be looking to go in to win that game to try, you know, make up the points on Southend United. But we're probably at a point now where we will come on to do the predictions. These are the current scores, Paul. Of course, beating me once again.
Yeah, nicked another point on you, Luke. So only 3 behind now. Let's go. Like you said, this is as interesting as the playoff picture in the National League. This is 10 games to go, or however many weeks we've got. So, yeah, I'm slowly catching you up, mate.
We still need that forfeit idea. I still have no idea what to do for that, unless we're just going to have to end up having to wear a York or a Bardic shirt come the end of the season, I suppose.
I'm sure we'll work something out. We'll work something out.
Also, please remember to like and subscribe, everyone. It genuinely does go a long way if you can do that. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of the season. Also, check out our sponsors, Cards Accepted. If you use the link in the description, you get 50% off your card machine. No contracts or monthly fees. And if you'd like to know how to play along to the Predictions League, then this is how you do that. Yeah, we're back. Starting things off then with Boreham Wood versus Brackley Town. Boreham Wood and Brackley have actually played each other 4 times. Well, I think this will be the 4th meeting this season between the two sides, of course, playing in the league, also the FA Trophy, the National League Cup, and of course now they meet again in the league. For Brackley, it's just 1 win in 9. Boreham Wood must be confident after that win on Tuesday. I can see only 1 winner in this one. I'm going 2-0 to Boreham Wood. How do you see it going?
I've gone 3-0 Boreham Wood, Luke. I think you're right. You know, there's not many teams that will put 3 past York, whether they've got 10 men or not. You know, there's not going to be many teams that do that. So, Brackley are really, they're looking like they could be in trouble. I saw them the other week play against Wealdstone. It was the win that we've got in the last sort of 14, 15 games. And they did look like they're an older team. They're aging. I know, yes, they had 10 men and we took advantage of that, but I think Wood are just going to be far too strong and they're banging form, aren't they? So, yeah, 3-0 to Boreham Wood.
I always feel with Brackley, they're the sort of team that if you can take the lead against them, then 90% of the time they go on to win the game. It's just scoring that first goal. That's how I've always felt when I watch Brackley play. I think they're quite an organised side, but they don't really offer much going forward and they rely heavily on set pieces. And I think Boreham would have the players going forward to potentially open up Brackley in this one. Moving on to the next game that we'll take a look at, Altrincham versus Truro City. Truro may have a little bit of confidence after that result in midweek away at Southend United. As for Altrincham, not drawn many at home all season. I think they've only drawn the 1 game at home this season. I'm going to back Altrincham to win this one. I think it'll be quite a low-scoring game. I'm going to go 1-0 to Altrincham, but I do think they'll pull through. How do you see it going?
Yeah, I think you're right, Luke. It's Truro are going to take heart from a draw against Southend, aren't they? But Altrincham at home as well, and you'd like, they need the points, Altrincham, because they've got to be mindful that they are only 7 points off the bottom four, and they've played a few more games than some others around them. So they're going to have to take advantage of a Truro team that are rock bottom, and I think Altrincham will win 2-0.
Moving on to the next fixture, it is, of course, Braintree versus Wealdstone. Now, this is a huge game for both clubs. Are Braintree pretty much down after Tuesday night now, or have they still got opportunity to survive? For me, I wouldn't say they're down at all, but I think they've got to win this one against Wealdstone. As for Wealdstone, they'll be really looking to try and get a result in this one to avoid being dragged back into relegation battle. Of course, a disappointing result on Tuesday night. How do you see this one going?
Oh, 100%. This is a 6-pointer, isn't it? When you look at Braintree could go within 3 points of Wealdstone. Wealdstone could go within 9 points, clearing 9 points from Braintree. So huge game. Both will be disappointed with their results in the week. Both were playing teams, Gateshead and Morecambe respectively. Wealdstone and Braintree would have been looking at going, these are teams that are below us. We need to win. It might not be many places below, but we can win these games, and they both have succumbed to it. So anyone who's supporting these teams are going to look at this and go, this could be quite pivotal with the games coming up. And it's a really difficult one to predict, Luke. I don't know what your feelings are on it. Wealdstone is struggling. They've struggled to score goals. They haven't got a centre forward of note. Michael Obiero is a centre forward that's not a centre forward. Shauna Dark was just coming back from injury. I'm not convinced of him as it is. We don't really have anyone else. So, I think this will be a low-scoring game as well. And I'm going to go 1-1.
Oh, you stole my prediction. I feel like I have to go.
Oh, sorry, mate. We'll put 1-1. Put 1-1. I think that's a fair. I can't see it being much else.
I think for Wealdstone, it's a game where you just want to avoid losing, to be honest. I think Braintree need the points more than them, and Wealdstone just need to keep that gap between them and the bottom four. And at the moment, there's a 6-point gap. They've got games in hand as well. I think the next 4 or 5 fixtures for Wealdstone are going to be crucial. They've got Braintree, Tamworth, Gateshead, and then Forest Green. That I think, to be honest, maybe bar Forest Green are all winnable. And with the way Forest Green Rovers have been since Christmas, that could be a game where they pick up results too. When you compare that to the final couple of fixtures, Southend, Scunthorpe, Rochdale, Altrincham, Boreham, Hartlepool, and potentially even Boston, they could all be within a shout of the playoffs come the final, couple of games of the season. So I think these next couple of fixtures are going to be crucial for Wealdstone just to confirm survival for next season. And I think this is one where they just need to avoid losing. As for Braintree, they need to win. Points at this stage of the season aren't good enough, I don't think. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, like yourself. We'll move on to the next fixture, and it's going to be Forest Green Rovers versus Aldershot Town. Now, I think this could be quite an entertaining one. Forest Green have been very mixed since Christmas. Of course, did finally get a win that ended their poor run of form at the weekend away at Gateshead, which could have been a bit of a banana skin, considering Gateshead's upturning form themselves. But they did win that game. As for Aldershot, still on great form. Of course, they lost at the weekend to Rochdale, but there's no disgrace in that. I see quite a high scoring one for this one. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. How do you see it going?
Yeah, that's not a bad shout. We thought the shots might trouble not Rochdale, but it appears that Rochdale sort of dispatched them really quite well. So I think you're right. I think it's an entertaining game. There's always goals in all the shot games, isn't there? And Robbie Savage is very much one of these that's XG focused and wants balls in the box and balls in the last third and play on the front foot. So I'm going to go with a 3-2 Forest Green win.
Fair enough then. Next fixture that we'll take a look at is going to be Hartlepool versus Halifax. potentially the game of the game week. Both sides sitting just outside of the playoffs at the moment. Halifax in 8th, Hartlepool in 9th. Both looking to kind of finish in the playoffs come the end of the season. Hartlepool, a massive missed opportunity, though, in midweek for them. After defeating Carlisle United and Solihull Moors in the previous 2 games, they went and lost at home to Sutton United. Of course, Sutton have recently improved, but still, for a side looking to finish inside the playoffs, that's a bit of a blow for them, considering Halifax weren't playing and seeing that Southend dropped points at home. I think for me, neither side can afford to lose this one. I think it'll be quite an open game. For me, I'm going to go Halifax to win 2-1. That might be me being biased, but Hartlepool have been very inconsistent throughout the season, and Halifax are capable of scoring goals, and I think offer a little bit more going forward. So I'm going to go 2-1 to Halifax. How do you see it going?
I've gone for a very similar result, Luke. You'll be pleased to know I've gone with Halifax and Hartlepool to draw 2-2. So it might mean Halifax might win. If I predict it's a win, they often lose, right? So, Halifax 2-2. So I think you're right. A good game, a really good game on paper. Halifax have got to start really gripping this opportunity to get in the playoffs if the others aren't going to do that. But a tough place to go, Hartlepool, and they've improved. We've seen improvements over the season. But I think, 2-2 will be the draw for that one.
The last 4 fixtures between the 2 sides, there's only been 1 goal in it. Halifax hadn't actually scored against Hartlepool in the previous 4 games either. So, based on this season, I'm hoping it's going to be a bit more of an entertaining game than that one. And I hope, for my sake, that we win, because I think if we draw, it's not good enough, and I think if we lose, it certainly isn't good enough, and I think that's vice versa with Hartlepool too, if they're wanting to finish inside the playoffs this season. So I'm going to go 2-1 Halifax for that one. Next game, Rochdale versus Boston. A bit of a banana skin for this one, but we did feel that the Aldershot game was a game where Rochdale could have potentially slipped up. And to be fair to Rochdale, they saw off Aldershot quite comfortably overall, I felt. This game, though, Boston, under Paul Hurst, just 1 defeat, which actually came in his first game away at Halifax. This could be a bit of a banana skin, but I think Rochdale throughout the season have proven that they can pull through the potential banana skins. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Rochdale win. How do you see it going?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a very similar sort of view to the Aldershot game. A team in form in the bottom half of the table. Rochdale are at home, and they're gonna take encouragement from the fact York have lost in the week and then now got that bit of cushion to go, and they want to start stretching away with, York have got a game that I think Eastleigh are, is a winnable game for York. So Rochdale have really got to put this in. I'm with you. I think Rochdale will win 2-0.
Fair enough then, yeah. I think as I say, it is a bit of a banana skin, but as I've mentioned, they've just managed to see off, these sort of sides throughout the whole season. I feel Rochdale, particularly at home as well, I think it's worth pointing out, that Southend game, bit of a banana skin. Boreham Wood, Carlisle, Forest Green, they've defeated all those this season at home recently. So I do think they'll probably have enough to see off Boston. But I think York fans may be looking at this game as one where Rochdale could potentially slip up. Back to the next set of fixtures, Solihull Moors versus Gateshead then. Solihull, for me, I don't particularly think they have much to play for. Gateshead, they need to be winning games at this stage of the season. They'll have a lot of confidence, I feel, after Tuesday night against Braintree. Not been too bad on the road this season, Gateshead, considering their current position. 14th in the away standings so far this season. And as we've seen, I think just 1 defeat in 5 for Gateshead. Solihull Moors are yet to win at home in 2026 either. So I actually think Gateshead will win this one 2-0. How do you see it going?
Blimey. Good. That's a bold shout. That is a bold shout, Luke. I think Gateshead they're improving slowly. I think they've got to do better than they are. We know they've got to do better than they are. Like you said, I think that's the only thing that they've got to go with is Solihull really are going to probably have to go through the motions over the next few weeks because they've got really now to play for. Players, like I've said before, have got contracts to worry about and potential moves and that sort of thing. And professional pride will make them want to win the game, but that's still going to be a harder motivating factor when you've got nothing to play for. I'm going to go with you, Luke. I think Gateshead will win, but I think it will be a closer affair. And I'm going to go 1-0.
Fair enough then. Yeah, as we've both mentioned, I think Solihull is not too much to play for. They've not got the greatest home form, and Gateshead are desperate for the points. And to be fair, I think it's a different Gateshead side to the side prior to Rob Elliott coming in. He's recruited a lot of players, a lot of new players that have come into the side, and I do feel overall they're playing a lot better football, and I do think they deserve to win on Tuesday night, although they did leave it late. Moving on to the next game that we'll take a look at is going to be Sutton United versus Morecambe. This is a particularly hard one to call, I feel, once again. Sutton have really improved as of late. I was very impressed with them at Halifax. I think overall this season, they've been in a false position, particularly since Chris Agata came in. I think there's been a lot of games where they've lost by 1 or 2 goals that could have gone the other way. I think they've got some quality players in that side. As for Morecambe, though, it does kind of change my opinion on the game of Sutton going into this one and winning is because the Morecambe winning in midweek against Wealdstone, the performance against York, the performance against Eastleigh. What were your thoughts on Morecambe and how do you see this one going? Because I'm quite interested to see what you think after seeing Morecambe on Tuesday.
They started terribly, Luke. I mean, Wealdstone went 1-0 up in the first 5 minutes, maybe in the 3rd minute or something like that, and you could at that point, and it was very, very early on, but as the game progressed, being 1-0 up, you could only see one winner coming out of the game, and Morecambe just looked like they were all over the place, probably similar to what they may have been a lot of the season. And then they managed to get a goal off a set piece, which is, it's always, when you're struggling at the bottom, getting goals off set piece is always something you're going to look for because you're probably not going to create much chances. I tell you the thing that are going for Morecambe, they've got 2 good centre forwards. They've got 2 good centre forwards. Popoff is one. I can't remember the name of the other lad, but they,
Nolan, is it?
And Nolan, yes, and Nolan scored an excellent left-footed strike from outside the box, cut inside. I was stood right behind at the other end, and as soon I was with my brother-in-law, and as soon as he shot, we both went, that's a goal, because it was just an excellent strike. And all of a sudden, from being 1-0 down, bereft of ideas, all over the place, getting pressed here, there, and everywhere by Wealdstone, all of a sudden they're 2-1 up going in at half-time. They've got something to play for. And then they've nicked an early goal on the break, which I thought was a very good goal. There were some deficiencies from Wealdstone. But if they played like that, then for the majority of the game, I can see them doing okay. But the thing is, if someone like Sutton, who are in a good run of form or in a better run of form than Wealdstone, if they take their chances that Morecambe gave up to Wealdstone, then Morecambe are going to be out of the game. You can see why Morecambe let a lot of goals in, Luke. Mm-hmm. On another day against a more potent team, Morecambe would have been 3 or 4 down at half time, potentially, because the chances Wealdstone missed throughout the game there wasn't bundles, but there was enough to win points, right? And against the Sutton and against other teams that may be better up front, they're going to get punished. So I can see Sutton winning this, especially at home. I can see Sutton winning this. I think they'll probably win 3-1.
Sutton, to be fair, from what I saw against Halifax, very good side, I felt. Defensively, that was the one area, a bit similar to Morecambe. It did seem like that was an area of vulnerability for them. Because it's been quite a high-scoring one, but I do think Sutton come out on top. I'm going to go 3-2 to Sutton for this one. We'll move on to the next game, which is Woking versus Tamworth. Working, we've made our opinions on Neil Ardley, of course. Got a result against Boston in midweek. We're leading that game 2-1 though. As for Tamworth, looking like they're going to go on to survive. Of course, lost to Yeovil in midweek. I think it's worth pointing out, Woking have the second worst home record in the division this season. And like I've said, I still don't feel that sacking Neil Ardley was the correct decision overall. And I think Tamworth come here and do a job on him. I'm going 1-0 to Tamworth. How do you see it going?
I was going to go 1-1. Probably not the most glamorous tie amongst all the fixtures this week, Luke. See how Woking respond to a new manager or an interim manager. And, it's Craig Ross, I think, is the goalkeeper's taken over. Long-standing sort of Woking player over a couple of spells. So, hopefully they'll respond to him from Woking's perspective. Tamworth are doing enough to stay afloat in the league. Not the most exciting. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw.
Someone's asked what shirt am I wearing. I think it's a Hoffenheim shirt, to be fair. We've also had a few predictions that have come in 1-1, 2-1 to Tamworth from the previous one, 2-2. Someone said, I'm hoping Rochdale decide to bottle it fully so we can finally be out of this league. Last season's playoffs were heartbreaking. I think that is a York City fan. Moving on to the next game, Yeovil versus Scunthorpe. Yeovil recently have improved in form. There's been a bit of an upturn in their form. Been pretty good at home, I feel, since the new year. As for Scunthorpe, really fallen off a cliff as of late. That Solihull Moors game, defensively, very, very poor. Of course, they did manage to pick a result up in that one. Recruitment-wise, interests me. Of course, Lee Butler is also good mentioning that he has just signed a new contract for them, which is fully well-deserved as the Scunthorpe manager. But recruitment, just before that Solihull game, but they brought in 3 lads, quite well built up as well. And the 3 lads were all like more or less teenagers, very inexperienced players. And it just feels like, I know Scunthorpe don't have one of the biggest budgets in the league, but when you're desperate for players, don't you feel potentially you'd be better getting experience in at this stage of the season, Paul?
It's finding the experience, Luke, at the right price and something that will complement what you already have. And I suppose if you get youngsters in, they're going to be possibly more available out of the EFL and the Premier League academies. And and you like to think that where are you getting that experience from? Because no team is going to give up their experienced players at this stage, unless, of course, there's budget restrictions, etc., that come into play when teams know they're not getting relegated or not getting promoted. That budgets do get slashed, etc. So, Scunthorpe are just in a little bit of a sticky patch. It's not to be unexpected, Luke, because we've always said, out of all those teams at the top end, are we struggling for depth and quality, and Scunthorpe are always going to be that way. Yeovil, I could see them a couple of weeks ago being sort of the 5th from bottom team and getting dragged into it. Got knocked out of the FA Trophy, and then from that point on, they seem to be doing okay. And I think I can see them winning on Saturday, being at home to Scunthorpe. They've got a bit more form, haven't they? Yeovil, sort of 2 wins and a draw in the last 5, whereas Scunthorpe haven't won at all. So I'm going to go with a Yeovil to win 2-0.
I think winless in 6, isn't it, for Scunthorpe now? Probably their worst form of the season. And I think playoffs for them, they should be fine, I feel. I know you look at their form, there's still 12 games to play for them, but I still think they'll do enough to finish in the playoffs this season. But they want to be going into those playoffs on good form to have a chance of getting promoted, because what we saw from Scunthorpe in that first half of the season was a side that, wherever they finish in the playoffs, you would potentially fancy them to do quite well. Where you compare how they're playing at the moment, particularly defensively, how open they are, they're a side for me that will get knocked out straight away if they're not going into the playoffs on decent form. Yeovil have improved. I'm going for a draw for this one. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. But a few Scunthorpe fans come in with predictions. A Scunthorpe fan said, Farrell, new signing from Barnsley, looked good for us, to be fair, on a tight budget. Yeah, the forward they signed. How did Zayn Tahir do? I used to go to school with him, so It'd be interesting to see how he does it at Scunthorpe. That is very weird. I can't lie. He used to be in my science, Paul.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Where did he play before? Has he been at the academy or?
He was at Sheffield United. I remember him at school. He used to be at Sheffield United's academy. He was all right, to be fair, but he never used to play like football. If I remember rightly, he never used to like really play football with Zor because of his Sheffield United. To be fair, to getting injured and things like that. So I never actually saw him play football. I can't lie, because he didn't play for the school team or anything.
Right.
But no, it's good. It's weird to see him make his debut in men's football.
I bet it is. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he's getting on. Hopefully, a Scunny fan can sort of give you an update and see how he's getting on.
Yeah, I know if someone's come on here and said, he was all right, to be fair. Couldn't blame him on the goals overall. Yeah, watch the highlights, and I didn't really look at him and think he was at fault for any of them, to be fair, overall. Moving on to the next one that we'll take a look at. We're on the final two now. York versus Eastleigh. I think it's a must for York that they bounce back after Tuesday's night's disappointment. I think if York drop points in this game and Rochdale managed to defeat Boston, then there's a bit of a gap there, and it's going to be a bit of an uphill task, I feel, for York to claw it back. But if they can win this game, they're still very much within distance of being able to overtake Rochdale and not relying on them to have a massive downfall, if that makes sense. At the moment, all Rochdale need to do is slip up, and York need to win in one individual game week. If York slip up again and Rochdale do better their game week, then there's a bit more of a cushion for Rochdale. I think they're going to bounce back in this one. I've not been too impressed with Eastleigh all season, to be honest. I think they've been particularly poor defensively, and I think there'll be a big performance from York after quite a disappointing one against Boreham Wood. I'm going to go York 4, Eastleigh 0. How do you see it going?
York at home score bundles of goals, don't they? Even managed to get 2 against Boreham Wood, and one of them was with 10 men. So, York are all. Will they let a goal in? That's the thing, Luke. Will they let a goal in against Eastleigh? You'd like to think they won't. I'll go 3-0. 3-0 York.
Yeah, I think it's just the importance of them winning this one, and I can't see them slipping up again. I think they're good enough to react. Even against Boreham Wood, they played mediocre. Maybe potentially I think it was a poor performance against Boreham Wood, who are one of the best sides in this league, had a man sent off, and they still, if the game had have gone on any longer, they could have potentially got back into it. They were 3-1 down. They have this never say die attitude, the York, and I think there'll be a big performance after Tuesday. Fag and Walcott will be starting in this one, which will probably have a major impact for them overall. But the interesting thing is, then without Josh Stones, how will they do? Because he was the man on form prior to that game against Boreham Wood, when, of course, he was sent off. But no, I think York bounced back in this one. I think there's a lot worse fixtures you could have when you need to bounce back than Eastleigh at home, Paul, isn't there? When you consider Eastleigh's current position.
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't want to be Eastleigh. They've got a new manager, Richard Hill's come back for the umpteenth time. Yeah, they've not pulled up any trees, Eastleigh. They're very uninspiring, and I think York will. They'll be like a wounded tiger. They'll want to sort of get back and try and get on the tails of Rochdale again, and hope that Rochdale have a tricky one at Boston. So, a comfortable win for York, I can see.
The final game of the game week is Carlisle United versus Southend United. Carlisle looking to maintain a top 3 finish this season for them. Of course, bit of a cushion on them and Boreham Wood at the moment. As for Southend United, sitting 7th at the moment, just on goal difference, but they do have 4 games in hand on Halifax. So it's very much in their hands to pull away, but this isn't the ideal fixture for Southend United to do that. They've got a terrible record against sides currently sitting in the playoffs, yet to beat anyone in the top 7, and they've lost the majority of them, including Carlisle, in the reverse fixture. Very disappointing result on Tuesday night for Southend, slipping up to bottom of the league Truro, and away at Carlisle at the moment. I'm backing Carlisle to win this one. I just don't think Southend have enough going forward to threaten Carlisle, and that's where I do feel you can get at. Carlisle is the defensive areas, and I do think Carlisle have enough going forward to break down Southend. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 Carlisle win. How do you see it going?
Yeah, a similar view to you, Luke. Carlisle on a good run of form, and it's Southend they're going to be kicking themselves that they dropped points against Truro, whereas Carlisle have only lost to Hartlepool, who are doing well in ninth. So they're going to look at Southend. I think it's a winnable game at home. Tough game, I think. Alongside Halifax and the Pool's Halifax game, it's sort of game of the week at that top end, and then Sutton, Morecambe, and Stones, Braintree at the bottom end. 6-pointers at both ends of the table, and I think Carlisle will take advantage of being at home and being more potent up front, and will win 3-1.
And that more or less wraps up the game week predictions then. Please remember to like and subscribe, everyone. It does genuinely go a long way if you can do that. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of the season and playoffs. And at the moment, I do think it is very much on. If we can continue in the same direction as what we've been going on in the last couple of weeks or so. Paul, as always, thank you for joining me tonight.
No problem, Luke. Enjoyed it as always. Let's hope I'll get a few more points and close that gap to the 3 that's in there. And yeah, good luck to everyone who's going to watch their teams at the weekend. Like I always say, hope your team does perform. My team certainly needs to on the weekend, and hopefully I'll be speaking to you, in the next week about Wealdstone winning. But yeah, some good games there to sort of consider.
Get your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be down there to answer them all too. If you have any points to make or any questions either as well. And we will see you next time. Bye for now.